So, welcome everybody. We have our dressage talk today. We already have 44 participants. And today we have two very important friends and two very important people in the dressage scenario around the world. So first, are you, okay, yes, now you're watching the PowerPoint. So my two guests today, they don't need an introduction, but I'm gonna talk to them a little bit. So the first one is Maribel Alonso. Maribel is a five-star judge from Mexico. There in the screen, you can see all the very important competitions that she has judged. She's been in the Olympic Games in London, in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. She was the president of the ground jury. All the Latin Americans we were very honored that she was there. She's been on World Cup finals several times, European championships, European young riders and juniors, North American young riders and juniors, Pan Am Games, Central American Games, Bolivarian Games. And not only as a judge, but I would also like to mention that Maribel has been TD for very important competitions. And more important than that, she has helped and worked closely with the FEI to get many things done. And she's also worked very hard with our Judges Club, the International Dressage Officials Club, the IDOC. And well, she's very active, and she's also promoted the sport in Mexico and in Latin America. So Maribel, thank you very much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me. This is an honor to participate and to be able to join the real world, so to speak, in times of COVID-19. I would like to take a minute just to say that my sincerest condolences for all of those who have lost a loved one, and to COVID or to any other thing. In this time, it has to be really hard. And for those who are sick, I wish you a quick and complete recovery.
Thank you very much, Maribel. So then I would like to introduce Juan Matute. That's another one that doesn't need introduction, but I will go through some of his important participations. He has won individual European championships in 2015. In 2016 and 17, he was bronze medalist for the European championships in the under 25 level. He was long-listed for the Rio Olympics. In WEG in Tryon, he was member of the Spanish team. He was long-listed for Tokyo Olympics. And well, you were also supposed to come to the Las Vegas World Cup, right, Juan?
Yes, we were waiting on the last qualification show, the World Cup in Hertogenbosch, but unfortunately because of this COVID-19, it had to be canceled. And anyway, so it turned into a downward spiral from there. But anyway, thank you, Cesar, for inviting me. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to join. Just to add a little bit to what Maribel said, again, my condolences as well to the people that have lost a loved one, a family member, or that they're going through this disease on a personal level. And I just hope for a speedy recovery. And I think that it's the perfect time to reflect on all of the many blessings that we all have, you know, and to keep the perspective on how lucky we are on so many levels.
Thank you, Juan, and thanks again for accepting this invitation. So, Maribel, before we start to the point, I would like to ask you some questions that are here. And I think it's important for our participants to know a little bit about your journey. And so if you could just talk to us how it started, you know, how your journey with horses and dressage started, why and when you became a judge, what difficulties have you had, happy moments, difficult times, and what are you hoping for the future?
Well, I think that how it started when I was around 10 or 12, when an uncle of mine introduced me to horses, because my family is not a horse person. They are not horse people. It's my husband, myself, and my sister, my brother-in-law. I I just fell in love with that, and I started to ride. I was lucky enough to be introduced to dressage and eventing pretty early, and I was a happy rider and competitor until I got a hip problem that ended up in surgery. And in that time that I couldn't ride, I was introduced to judging, being a scribe, to Mariette Vitages, who convinced me of joining this world just helping others like a scribe. And from that moment onwards, I went on to learn how to judge. And I became an FEI judge around 1991, something around that time. But in 1990, I was already judging on the way of becoming international. The difficulties of the journey. It's long. It's I think that's those are the difficulties, the distances we have to travel, the time we have to dedicate to this passion, because it has to be a passion. And I think that when you want something, you just go for it. The happiest moments, I think that every moment has been a happy one. If we talked about, if we just remember them in terms of what they have left in each of every one of us. Experiences enrich your life, enrich yourself. And I think whether they were difficult or they were easy, all are shareable, or all are these moments that we cherish and we value for the rest of our lives. Today we are all in confinement, which is a luxury. We are all locked down, which sounds a little bit weird, but I think that when we looked around in the world and see that there are people that have to go every day out to work to make a living, it's a luxury to be able to stay at home and stay healthy and keep safe. So today I am just trying to keep the hope, to hope that this is going to be over soon. And even though the future will be totally different as it is today, we have to keep on going. And the future, I mean, in my nearest future, I would have been today in Vegas as a TD, something that unfortunately did not happen. And I hope that the next big shows have been canceled in France and in Spain. And let's see what happens for the young riders, the World Young Riders Championships in Verden in August.
Thank you very much, Maribel. That's a very nice message. And we're all hoping that after this pandemic and this isolation, everybody will become a better human being. So we go to Juan again. So Juan, I found this picture of you on the internet. So how old were you when this picture was taken? And were you jumping? What were you doing there?
It's crazy. Looking at this picture brings back so many memories, you know, from my beginnings. I was a show jumper back then. I must have been 6 or 7 years old. And all I can remember, or most of what I remember from that stage in my life, was that I just like to have fun. I like to canter really fast and go for the win and clearly make really thick tie knots. So I remember that I grew up looking up to my dad. You know, my father was already qualifying for the Olympic Games in 2008 in Beijing. But before that, he had, of course, all of these different horses competing on a national level, international level. And I remember going to all of those shows with my family. And it was always this family feeling, you know, it was very homemade. And the first thoughts that I can remember that would link my passion to horses was competition. You know, my sister had this pony called Caramelo, and I remember that he was quite naughty, and he would always make My sister have to make a big effort to get him going. And I was back then into taekwondo, tennis, soccer, like a normal, young guy, young kid. And I would actually even ride with my taekwondo suit. I don't know, how my parents even allowed me to do that, but I would just get on my pony and start riding in the arena. And anyway, always focused into competition. And then little by little, I ended up developing this passion for horses, for the actual relationship, the bond that you can build over time, and the perfecting that you can little by little improve. And so that becomes also a huge part, of my bond and my passion for the sport. The good moments, most, I would say actually all, because I have always had the privilege of sharing it with my family, my parents, my siblings, and it's always been a very family type of trips and experiences, and I really, really enjoy that. Difficult moments, fortunately, not too many. Of course, we all go through our different struggles, but when you keep the perspective and you realize how blessed you are because of all of the things that you have around you, and in my case, my family members being so supportive of this passion that before was a hobby, now is my profession. So it's never really been too tough in that sense. Disappointments, also not too many. I've been quite fortunate that until the moment I've reached pretty much all of my goals. I have beaten my personal bests time and time again, achieved all of the little milestones that you set, along the way. And even the bad days, I think you can find a positive side to them, and you can find something that can inspire you or can motivate you to keep working really hard. Today, I'm in Spain, I'm in Madrid. We are going through this COVID-19 together, all of us around the world. Like Maribel pointed out, they've canceled all of the major championships. So I guess that can also be a bit of a link to the disappointments that I said earlier, that sure, it was quite upsetting to have the World Cup final in Las Vegas canceled, and the Tokyo Olympic Games, and all of this, our competition calendar, but it is what it is, I have quite an exciting stable of horses. I am currently working with 11 to 12 horses. I'm not riding them all myself, of course. I have an assistant rider, but we keep ourselves quite busy. And as for the future, I have big goals. I want to be an Olympic rider. I was hoping I would be able to make it this summer. So I guess I'll have to wait till next year. Let's see how things turn out. But I want to, little by little continue growing as a rider, improve, get even more successful, and of course grow as a human being, and be able to bring all these values that the sport and that horses give us into relationships with humans, your family, friends, etc.
Okay, wonderful, Juan. Thank you very much. So now I have to explain everybody a little bit what we're going to do right now. At the beginning, when I talked to Maribel and Juanito, our idea was to talk most of the time about the basics and the scale of training, which I'm sure everybody is very familiar with. But while we were discussing this, Maribel caught my attention that there was this amazing article on the FEI website about a trip that Juan did with wild horses in the Pyrenees, and talking about this pandemic and talking about how human beings must adjust to what is going on. We thought it would be a wonderful idea to have Juan talk to us about that experience. So before we give the microphone to Juan, since this was Maribel's idea, I would like to Maribel to explain a little bit about it. Maribel.
Technical difficulties.
Maribel. Okay, so I'm going to check on that, but then Juan, why don't you talk to us about this experience, and how was it like, and what?
Sure.
How did it go, and what was the outcome?
So sure. So it started out as quite a surprise. It wasn't really planned. I was just coming back from competing at the Spanish National Championships of Young Horses, and I arrived back to my home in Madrid. And the next morning, I received a call from from the people from the team behind Horse Pilot, the brand that we went to shoot this promo video for. And they called me telling me that they needed a male writer and that they would like to count with me. And I am quite adventurous. So I said, sure, count me in. I'm in. Let's do it. And they explained to me a little bit over the top what was the idea behind this trip, which was to go to the Pyrenees and to shoot this beautiful video in the wild with all of the natural elements during a transhumance of the Marans horses, a breed of horses of that specific area in France. And so it all sounded very pretty. And I said, sure, why not? It will be a nice few days of almost like holiday vacation. And since it was quite a long year for me and I didn't have too much holidays, then I said, all right, I'm in, count me in. And it ended up turning out to be probably the experience of my life so far. Quite an unforgettable experience. Maybe we can show the video, Cesar, and then we can expand on that.
Yes, that's a good idea. So we have a video that was made. So I hope the quality is good and that you enjoyed it. You can enjoy it. I think it's amazing.
I think the audio is cut out, Cesar.
Okay, hold on.
Maybe in the settings of the presentation, no?
Chance to approach the alpha mare.
There we go.
I was in a bit of worry that perhaps
start it again, no? Because the beginning is quite cool.
Then when I made it and I could put the halter on her and started to lead the entire herd, and I was really, really impressed by that animal respect, that animal instinct.
Really amazed by the energy and power they have and what they are capable of doing for us.
It's especially very, very interesting.
I'm Laura Demay. I've been working for Pilot since more than now. I'm in charge of events, partnerships, ambassadors, drivers.
We are competitive riders, coaches, grooms. We are jockeys, trainers, highly skilled horse dancers and show jumpers. But before all of this, we are horse people.
My name is Juan Matute. I'm a dressage rider from Spain, my father being a professional rider and a 3-time Olympian. This experience is changing me, and I can't wait to apply it to my daily life and my daily routine.
I started to feel today that my horse really started to trust me also, because I think I trusted her and she started to trust me. We gave confidence to each other. I'm Hanna Tardivo from Finland, and I am show jumping rider.
We love horses in their purest and freest form. This journey on horseback, over many obstacles, surrounded by the unknown, sent us in search of the horses for the heart of our passion, and so in turn, finally find ourselves.
Yeah, it's bringing back all of the special memories. Yeah, it was quite an emotional trip.
Okay, sorry, we had some technical difficulties there with the audio at the beginning, but could you listen to it at the end, Juan?
Yeah, towards the end it was better. It was just those first few seconds, but it's fine. More or less, you could see some of the beautiful, really breathtaking shots of the landscape, of how everything looked. We were really surrounded by all of the natural elements. It was quite a crazy experience. It rained, it was cold, all of a sudden it was really hot depending on the areas of the mountain that we would be. And it was, quite interesting because it all started out as just this trip to shoot a video, a campaign video for the 2020 clothing line, of Horse Pilot, the new collection. And it turned out to be such a much deeper experience because as you could see in some of those shots, we were riding these horses without any bits. It was just these really loose halters There were horses that were out in the wild. So it's not like they're trained. They're not, as the person speaking in the background of the trailer was saying, that we are used to ride in such a sophisticated way, you know, in all of these training techniques and philosophies and theories. And out there, it was just you, your horse, this herd of 30 other horses, and the mountain, you know, the trees, the birds, the streams, the really steep sloped hills. It was, you know, you were out there and you had to really trust your horse. In my case, it was this mare Agur. And at first I remember that I was so tense, you know. The first few minutes, the first few hours, I was trying to ride in the way that I was taught, you know, as I was growing up into the sport, by perhaps asking too much control. And those horses were used to just be out in the wild and once or twice a year do this transhumance. Just to get back to the idea of the transhumance, because of the seasons, these horses have to be moved from one place of the mountain to another. This is in the Pyrenees. The winter was coming. So in order for the survival of this species, they were having to move. And so it was quite emotional, because actually even from the get-go, we arrived and we had to go find the herd of these horses. They were up in the mountain. We had to like do a 50-kilometer trek around up the hills, up the mountains, with the Sherpa leading us. Exactly, and that's where they were. And so we had to go find them. And we were seeing all of these little, you know, pieces of the tail, the hair from the tails, the mane, on the fences, from the wooden fences. And little by little, we were, you know, trying to find them as if we were hunters. And once we arrived, they were all just looking at us. We were like 20 or 25 people with drones, with all the film crew. So of course they were scared at first. And it was quite interesting that the Sherpa was telling us, you know, you have to with your mind clear a path between you and the horses and gradually approach to them and start that initial contact. And of course, because I was the professional rider and everything, they were like, here, you're going to be the one that puts the halter on the alpha mare. And that's what I was saying in the trailer, that those first few seconds when I was approaching Vega, and she was this 26-year-old or something mare with this bell on her neck. Exactly, that's the exact moment. And I had to little by little approach her with respect, you know, with feeling. And so all of these are emotions and values that we also need to apply into our own writing at home, even with our own sophisticated writing. But it was crazy how it shared so many similarities, you know. And anyway, once we were able to get the mare Vega, then we led the entire herd to an area of the mountain where we would be able to saddle up certain horses that they would assign to us, and begin this trip, this odyssey. And I can only remember that I had goosebumps the full trip. It was 3 days, and it was such an emotional roller coaster, Cesar, because I was afraid, I was excited, and I was worried that I would get injured, that I would fall. This is a herd of 30 horses that were kicking each other. There was the hierarchy of the mares, the alpha mare, and everyone behind. And it was quite interesting how the horses we were riding, even my own mare, I wasn't able to push her to go in front of the alpha mare. Like, I was not able to. She would just shut down and say, no, I'm going to keep my distance. And it was at first difficult to adapt to the interaction of the herd, you know, to the interaction of the hierarchy. But at the end of the trip, I became one of them. We became one with our horses. And I know it changed me, because essentially that's what we're trying to search for in our writing, you know, in the bonds that we create with our horses. It comes down to trust between horse and human and horse. It goes both ways. You know, at first when we were approaching the herd, as you can see in that picture, it was about the horses trusting us to approach them and lead them to where we wanted to take them. And then later on, it turned into us as riders trusting them with our life, pretty much, because there was no control. They were the ones pretty much deciding the tempos, where they were going to be walking on the path. So it was, very, very interesting.
One question: is there anything that you learned that you could apply afterwards for your dressage horses and for your competitions, and did it benefit in any way in your way of riding? this experience?
Absolutely, Cesar, absolutely. From the moment, I mean, even within the experience, during the 3 days that we were there, I was already feeling the changing because I had to pretty much learn again how to ride, I almost felt like if I didn't know how to ride, like if I didn't know how to interact with horses, and I've been surrounded with horses since I was 4 years old or even younger because of my family. And at first it was like, I guess my arrogance or my ego was thinking like, what the heck, like this is horses riding, like this should be pretty much the same. And then I realized that it really wasn't, because it's something much deeper, you know, much more emotional, and it's all through feeling. And I know that it changed the way I was riding because I learned to adapt more to my horses instead of to try to change them into what I wanted to do. Nothing easy to do, but it's something that I still need to work on, of course, but already in my head, it changed the way that I saw it.
Okay, that's great. I think that connection that you must have with your horse, you have that feeling when you enter those big competition arenas where there is a lot of electricity and a lot of music and a lot of people. And at the end, it's just, you know, a true connection with your horse that would allow you to do all the Grand Prix movements in such a difficult environment. What would you say about that?
I think that sometimes we get too caught up, especially us riders, when we're competing, not just in training. When we're competing, we get too caught up with the outside variables, you know, the pressure of maybe the large crowds, or the judges perhaps sitting in their boxes waiting for us to show our exercises, perhaps the added pressure from wanting to do a really good job and achieve a good score, and maybe also the riders that are going in front of you or that are competing in that same class as you. And overall, what I learned from that experience is that if you really learn to block everything out, if you learn to just be one with your horse and apply what you have been working on every single day at home into the test, it should be the same. I mean, we work on the exact same exercises as we do at home. The only thing that changes is that we're dressed in a, you know, almost like a suit and tie, you know, in our frack with our competition clothes and white gloves, and we need to show everything effortlessly and harmoniously, but it's riding.
Okay. Maribel, would you like to comment about this a little bit? I know we both were very shocked when we saw this, and it brought us many emotions. So would you like to comment on this? Hello?
¿Cómo se ve, no?
Hello?
Maribel.
I can see you, Maribel. Te podemos ver.
No contesta, está planeando un plan maestro.
Maybe Maribel, I'll try to guide you through how to activate your microphone. So if you move your mouse, okay, from the computer into towards the left corner to the bottom, there should be like a mic there. Maybe click it. Okay, I see that you muted it and you unmuted it. Now tap on the arrow, like an upwards arrow, and give you options. And maybe you see there's going to be like a little window that shows up with where the microphone.
Yeah, Duki.
No? It should be able to let you set up from where.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Maribel, can you hear us? I think we can hear you. Go ahead. No, Maribel, we cannot hear you. You have to put your microphone on. Okay, Juan.
Hello?
So I think you can continue. So while Maribel gets the microphone set up, so why don't we finish up? How was the end of this story?
Sure. So as I was saying, it was quite an emotional roller coaster. I was scared. I was excited. I don't think I've prayed so much in my life. I was praying pretty much all the time because I was all the time thinking. I tend to worry. I tend to be very square-minded. I need to more or less be always in control of things and calculate the outcomes, the possibilities, like what can potentially happen. And I remember just cantering, really in the full canter. I don't think I've cantered so fast in my life before, because I was one with the herd. So the herd would go and you go with it. I mean, you can't just pull back and hold back, because your horse would want to pick up the pace because it's seeing that his friends are going. So I remember being really worried that, okay, if at any given moment my mare trips, or there's a stone or a rock on the ground, and we trip at this speed, I'm going to die. I'm going to, even though I'm wearing a helmet, I'm going to hit the ground and I'm just going to be gone. That's the end of Juan Matute GUIMON. And so at first I was all the time like pulling back, trying to keep in control of the rhythm of the speed. And then I think that was the first day. The second day, the third day, I was enjoying it. I just let go of the reins. I wasn't even holding back, not even nothing. I was just letting go and trusting the mare with my life, you know. And it was really, really emotional. The Sherpa, actually, something that I found really interesting. The Sherpa, the leader, the owner of the business, and the leader of the trip. I got the chance to spend some time with him, and I was asking him questions, and I kept asking him like about his philosophy, because he seemed like he was a very interesting and intellectual guy, even though he was from the woods and he lived there, and he almost seemed like if he was not connected to the world, you know, no almost like no internet, no nothing. He was just out there with his horses and surrounded by nature. And I kept asking him about his philosophy, and it was very interesting that he shared so many common denominators with our theory of dressage or of proper equitation. You know, how you're not meant to pull from the reins. It's all in the seat, in your posture, your legs. The last thing you do is pull with your hands. It was like the emergency brake. I remember he said, only pull if it's an emergency, like you're going to just, I don't know, jump over a cliff or something. But don't use your hands. It's everything in your seat, in your energy, like in your thoughts. You think of like sitting deeper, and your horse will listen to you. And I was thinking, we're riding in these really cheap, low quality saddles, these horses that are from the wild, that don't know anything about training. Like, how are they going to understand when we sit deep and put our legs together that they are meant to sit too and slow down? And so I was interacting with him with these type of conversations, and it was so interesting how much of a genius he was, how much he understood of the biomechanics of horses and the way they think, the way they're wired. And that at the end of the day, they're horses. You know, they're no different whether they're living in the mountain or they're stabled in the most spectacular barn. It's at the end of the day the same type of philosophy. Riding, you're a rider.
Okay, Juan, thank you very much. So let's see if we can hear Maribel now. Do you hear us, Maribel? We see you, but we cannot hear you. I think you have your microphone off, and that's why we cannot hear you. Hello?
Maybe we can try something, Cesar. Maybe she can call you through WhatsApp or something while she has the video on, and you can hear an audio from a separate device.
Okay, so I'm gonna call you to your WhatsApp, Maribel.
Yeah. These are the fun things about making a life, that all of these things can happen.
Hola.
Ahora, there we go.
Te oímos perfecto.
So sorry about this. You hear me now?
Yeah, we're listening to you through my WhatsApp phone.
Okay, this is funny. So I wanted to talk about the control.
Yes, that's a wonderful idea.
One talks about control in a controlled environment, how we like to ride, how would like the show conditions to be all under our control. Today, we are back in no control. So I think that these experiences from one can relate a lot to what we are going through.
Hello? We lost you again, Maribel.
I think it,
Now I have her again.
Yeah. I will try. The only thing I was saying is try to connect through my phone to see if that is better than the computer.
Yes, we're listening to you through your phone.
Okay. So I was saying that we all, and it's not only Juan, he's a very professional, good writer that keeps in mind every single detail. But we as judges, trainers, owners, everyone wants to have things under control. And we have to find out that now life is putting us in a different situation. And that's what I want to let us know how he improved his writing through this experience.
I learned to trust. It sounds very basic, but it's so true, to trust, you know, and I surrendered myself to the mirror that I was writing, and I just didn't stay against the flow, you know. I joined it. I became one with it, and I trusted my mare, and I let go of everything else. And I actually even enjoyed more the Western type of wild riding, just let go. I was at first sitting all nice and upright and stiff, almost posture, like, you know, my dressage riding, you know, I mean, I was used to feeling the back, feeling the half holds, feeling the little leg push. And all of a sudden I'm feeling this horse that just knows to go and halt whenever the herd does it as well. So I ended up learning to just let go, relax, you know, take it easy, trust, surrender yourself to the situation, to the feelings, to the flow. And it's all about the energy, the rhythm, you know, and when you relax and you become loose, you become one.
Will you do that today as well?
I try, but that's what my father tries to make pressure on me to apply it, not just think of it and understand it, but, you know, turn it into a reality. And that's a challenge.
And were you assigned the mayor, or was it the Sherpa who chose for you?
Yes, and I found that to be so interesting because he knew they were all black, same size, same length in the fur, and in the hair, in the coat, sorry, and they all looked the same, identical clones. And he knew them one by one because of their personality, because of being so much time with them, you know. And the first day when the ridden horses to each rider, he at first put me on a different one, then another one, and finally he said, you know what, no, for you, I think it's going to be more interesting for your learning. He said, for your learning, to ride this mare. And I said, why? I hope she's safe. I hope you put me on the safest horse there is in the herd, because I have big ambitions this year. This is my year. I can't let anything, or at least I need to reduce the amount of risk. And he was just laughing, and he said, no, you need to ride this mare because she's the most stubborn. She's the most leader-like after the actual leader, Vega, and it's going to be good for you. This man that didn't know me, just all of a sudden, I guess, sensed how I was, what kind of a person I was, and he said, that one's going to be a valuable lesson for you to ride.
Okay, Juan, thank you very much. I think we lost Maribel again. Are you there? There's something wrong with the connection, but well, I suggest we continue.
Don't stress, Cesar, we got this.
Yes. I mean, we have had more difficult times. So the thing that we wanted to talk about, besides that very interesting experience, was about the basics. And you know, everybody knows about the training pyramid, but I always think that the only way you can get through the high levels that you have achieved is if you work on the basics. So Juan, if you don't mind, I would like you to talk a little bit about rhythm and how do you see how important it is and how do you work to achieve that from the beginning?
Sure. So as you said, the basics is everything. Everything else is circus. It's just tricks that horses learn over time, you know, over repetition. And so many times, my father and I speak about this quite often, that we are so obsessed with collected work, with control, as Maribel was saying, and just holding back. And horses also lose interest. Like they almost forget that they can canter big and that they can buck and they can move and they can really feel themselves, full body. And so we try to always remind ourselves that the basics of collection come from the pushing power. I mean, collection is not a slow pace. It's not slowing down. It's really active and powerful movement, but just everything more put together, you know, and under control. But it's power in its ultimate version, under control. And I think that's a main mistake that we can make. And I'm the first one to do this, to think from the front to the back, and it's from the back to the front, you know. And we try to always keep even our Grand Prix horses feeling like a youngster, you know. Canter, open up the canter, canter in a posting position as if you were a show jumper. You know, have your horse really feel alive. And then when you can control that, they are working more with you, you know, because it's fun for them.
Okay. And there's one thing that the trainers are always talking about it. The judges are always talking about it. What do you think about the issues with the back and the importance of having the back to have a proper ride?
The back is everything. I think we can all agree with that. I much prefer a horse with a super supple and elastic back than a horse with a crazy expressive mechanic, you know, hind leg and front leg. If you have a stiff back, you don't have transitions, you don't have harmony, everything is stiff. My father has always taught me that everything is the back, you know, how much a horse can sit. You can train everything else. You can train for more impulsion. You can make a horse stronger through training and through the right technique. But if you don't have a natural quality back, you don't have anything. And I think that all of the top Grand Prix horses, what they all share is having a super elastic back.
Okay, that's really good. So here, Juan, we have a picture of you. And I would say that one of the highlights of your rides is that you usually show relaxation and suppleness. Where was this picture taken, and how do you work towards that relaxation and suppleness?
I had to laugh a little bit about that comment. I appreciate it a lot, Cesar, but it's quite interesting because this horse that we can see in the picture is Quantico, and I believe you can remember him from the days that
I know very well.
Juniors and young riders, and it was the most opposite you could get to relaxation and suppleness. And you know what's funny is that that picture was in Lyon at the World Cup qualifier in Lyon, and we're doing a half pass to the left. This horse could not half pass. We could not get a single Prix St. George half pass for a 7. It was impossible. There was no bending. It was tense. It was tight. It was uncomfortable. And over time, with technique, repetition, relaxation in the training, we were able to get the bending and the suppleness, elasticity, and relaxation. And so it's quite, I think, inspiring that you can see that happen over time. You know, you just need to wait.
Okay, at this moment, Maribel, are you following us? I don't know. I think there is a problem in the connection at her place.
But I think it's the settings. It has to be from the settings because I remember when I also was trying to join at our review call yesterday, I could also not speak for the beginning. And so it has to be in the settings, in the arrow. There's like
we had her very good for one moment, and then we had a problem with her again, and now I don't even see her on the participants.
I can see her. I can see Maribel.
Now?
Oh, now I lost her. Maybe, why don't you try something, Cesar? Why don't you take off the mute everyone and then do it again? Maybe it stayed as...
Now we have everybody.
You don't have me?
Now we have to finally. So Maribel, were you listening?
Wow. I have been all the time here, but you know, it's been like a roller coaster of black and white.
Okay. So now,
There he is.
Hola, Tote. He visto que estaba por ahí. Aprovecho para saludar.
well, now I have to silence everybody. And no.
I think there's an option, Cesar, to mute everyone.
Yes,
If you
I did
open...
that.
Okay, okay then.
But then I have to find then Juan and Maribel. So I found.
I can see you.
Okay, good.
Now I can, yeah.
Good. And now we're going
Juan?
to Juan
Yeah.
again. So do you hear us, Juan?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear
We
me now?
can see Maribel as well.
Hey.
So we're back on
Okay,
track.
let's go back.
1 hour in, we're able to fix it.
Okay. Well, this happens. We're not, we have to adjust, right? That's what exactly what we were talking about, and not trying to have everything in control.
Yeah.
So Maribel, we were talking about, we went back to the basics that we had talked about before. And Juan was talking about relaxation and suppleness. And he was explaining how he had a horse that was very tense at the beginning. And now we were showing him a picture where he looked, a picture that we really thought it was interesting. Not this one,
I wish.
but this one, but that's not bad. Don't be such a perfectionist.
That's a very good one, I would say. It seems like you have the bridge.
Yeah.
That bridge of the back, huh? The hind legs towards, from the back to the front. So
I wanted to add just one comment that I think I missed earlier, that speaking about the back. Also something we need to keep in mind is that every horse is different. Some horses are naturally hollow in the back. This horse in particular, his back is quite low. It's quite low, and his hip, his croup is high. And so it's almost like in this valley shape. And it was very difficult for us to, through training, be able to change his mechanism. He's also a show jumper bloodlines. So it was very, very difficult for us to teach him how to become a dressage horse, because his biomechanics was naturally very different. So we had to really train him to put his croup under, to put his hind legs, pushing his hind legs up, and his back would come up as a reaction to this type of mechanic. But that's quite the challenge.
Okay, thank you, Juan. So one other thing that the judges are always looking for is the connection, a nice connection. I don't know, probably Maribel could tell us about this, because I think judges are always looking for that, and it would be very nice to have a good explanation from you, Maribel, as to what the judges are looking for in terms of connection.
I think we have to remember that connection or contact, it's everything that it's in contact with the horse that will have an influence directly on the horse. But then what we are finally, it translates into a nice, steady, foamy mouth, quiet. We don't want to see an open mouth. We don't want to see the tongue sticking to one side or even to the front or to the side. We want the horse to be relaxed, accepting the bit, and to keep that position of the head and neck and through the carriage, you know, which is quite difficult to achieve. But I think that when you are able to look at those hands who are giving and cooperating with the horse, and letting go when they have to let go, and taking back when they have to get back, it's when you achieve that, because you're giving your partner, the horse in this case, the chance, the opportunity.
Okay, that's very good, and that's very important, and that's when the marks become low, if sometimes You know, it may be a wonderful presentation or wonderful performance, but if there are issues with the contact, the judges have to go low. And there's another thing that we wanted to talk today, and it was about the straightness. That is not only straightness, but you know, it also corresponds to bend when the horses are going through circles, even in training level, big circles or 8-meter circles in the St. George, and through the corners in the Grand Prix. So Maribel, could you talk about the importance of straightness for us, please?
Well, we want to see that the hind legs are following the front legs and therefore what is in front of them. So I think that we as human beings can relate to this straightness as well, because many times when we are exercising ourselves, we can feel that the top part of our body is not in alignment with the hind legs, with the hips in this case, and your legs. And that's when we have to think about where the hind legs are and where are we heading, what is in front of us, and where are we taking our horse, because your body, your hip bones will take you where you're looking at. So many times it's about the rider that is not absolutely straight on the horse and tends to get crooked.
I agree.
Do you agree?
Totally, 100%, Maribel.
Yeah, I think that so many times is about the rider more than the horse. But as a consequence, you will see a horse that it's not going into a straight line.
I agree 100%. Especially, I had a flashback to one of the conversations I had recently with my father in the flying changes. We have a 6-year-old that it's normal that the young horses in the flying changes are not super straight, but it's most of the times also out of the lack of confidence of the rider. We ride our changes crooked. We are trying to take them away from the horse. Like, we're not really asking with the horse to find that flying change. And one thing that my father taught me when I was very little was that my seat should always be following this forward motion into towards their ears. And in the flying change is the same thing. I mean, it's one more stride of canter. Even more so, it's one more powerful stride of canter, because it should be a jump into the flying change. And that's when you can really get the uphill quality. And it's all about the riding posture. Like you said, the moment we're crooking, we're getting our hips crooked or our posture a little bit out of the straight line, out of alignment, then that's when the problems come.
We collapse the hips and things like that, and then the whole thing changes. The whole, yeah.
Yeah, of course, there is an obvious correlation between a good seat, a good position, and a good connection, and obviously a straightness or clear bend. Juan, I have a question from Tanya. She's asking, what are your favorite relaxation movements or exercises when you train your horses at home?
Leg yields. I love leg yields. It's the best exercise there is. Okay, there's a different lateral exercise for a different purpose, but in my opinion, for relaxation, on the top line, on the back, is leg yields. You can do also hunches in or shoulder in, but I think the one that really does it for me is the leg yields from one side of the arena to the other. Basic, but it's so good.
Okay, thank you, Juan. So, Maribel, the other topic, it's always impulsion. And I would really appreciate if you could talk about this for a moment, how important it is, what is the difference between impulsion and running, and you know, what's our idea of a forward-going horse that we want to see in the arena?
I think it's the thrust from the hind legs that is projecting this power to the front. And it has nothing to do with speed. That many riders have the feeling that if they go quicker, they get the impulsion that we as judges and trainers, we want to see. I think it's about this possibility to develop. We are developing through the training. We are developing an athlete. So that athlete is little by little getting the strength and the power. When he has the power, when the horse has the power on the hind legs, he can't just project himself forward with a bigger and more ground covering movement.
Juan, and what have been your experiences about this? I mean, sometimes you have horses that want to run with you. Sometimes you find horses that are a little more lazy from behind. How do you approach these two different kind of horses in your daily training?
Every horse has a different trigger point. Every horse has a different need. Like you said, some are they have a more tendency to run and to really get heavy on your hand and not really carry and push from behind, but really like pull almost from their front legs. And I think it all comes from the seat and the preparation. You know, some horses, unfortunately, they could have a really nice, for example, we're looking now at this extended trot from Charlotte with Valegro. And some horses have a very good quality and they could give you a super extended trot or a super impulsion overall. But because the preparation was not there, maybe they just don't feel confident enough to give you all of that. Or you as a rider, you're not really being able to unlock it. With other horses, if you ask for maybe too much, there's a chance that just because of their biomechanics and their balance, they will maybe break into the canter in the trot, or it will look like you were running and it's not really pushing. It's not really the impulsion, but it's just speed, like Maribel was saying. And I think there's a fine balance. That's why we need our trainers, because not always what you feel is what you can see.
Good. Juan, I have a question from one of the participants, and now that you're in front of two judges, you're going to have to be very honest. And the question is, Juan, do you used to agree with the judges' marks? Having in the mind your good writing, what do you need to have top marks? So go with the first one. Do you usually agree with the judges' marks?
Most of the times. And actually it can happen that I think sometimes you can be even too generous, because I'm a very perfectionist, you know, and for me, it's never enough. You know, for me, I think there's always so much more that you can improve. And I'm my biggest critic. And yeah, I believe that through having big expectations, that's the only way to improve.
Okay, there's another question for you. As a professional rider, you need to ride any horse that comes to you. With some horses, the trust-respect relationship comes natural, so easy. But how would you work to get that trust-respect relationship with difficult horses, the ones that are very stubborn and more likely to test you?
It's very true. As a professional rider, you need to be able to work with any horse, because you don't always have the opportunity to choose. At the end of the day, you need to be able to make it happen. And actually, as a matter of fact, the horses that I've made it to Grand Prix and to the top level, there were horses that were not really purchased for me. They were investments for my parents to sell. That's our business, to buy and sell horses. And these horses, for different reasons, they were maybe too difficult or whatever. And I had to learn to make them work and work with them and improve over time. And that gave me such an experience, because I feel like it made me mature so much more as a rider, and that's experience you can take with you in your bag, and you can apply it to different horses. And most of the times, the most challenging, the most stubborn, the most difficult horses tend to be the ones that really leave a footprint in you as a professional or as an athlete or whatever.
Okay, now we have a lot of questions in the chat, but before we go to those questions, let's talk a little bit about collection. And I think many times the judges are saying, you know, St. George level or intermediate level, or even in the Grand Prix, nice, but lacking engagement. So Maribel, would you please talk a little bit about the importance of collection and the different degrees of collection when you are judging, let's say, a first or second level test, or when you're riding St. George, or when you're riding Grand Prix, and why is it so important?
Well, actually, at the end of the day, collection is like the last state in the scale of training, is your ultimate goal. But of course, it cannot be the same collection in a second level horse to a Grand Prix horse. But nevertheless, it has to do with the taking weight behind, and the degree of that lowering of the hunches, or the amount of weight the horse is gradually taking, can lead to a better balance, and therefore the picture changes completely. I fully agree with what Juan said about the horses that, and you as well, the horses that tend to run and lean on the forehand. And but actually, then we have to go back into how to make it more easy for them to put on to become stronger, so they can take that little weight, even though if it's in small quantities. They have to be able to develop that strength and power to gradually be able to take that weight. If you see the picture of these, I think it's Edward Gal. The first thing you see in the piaffe is how the horses goes and lowers the haunches and takes the weight from the front leg, so he can become much more expressive. So here it's I would say that if we were judging this class, we would never question that this horse is collected.
Great. And Juan, what are your thoughts about collection, and what are your favorite exercises to increase the collection, the engagement?
For me, collection is lightness in the forehand, is the ability to go back and forth between transitions without any effort, you know, with your seat. With you feel like, to me, I always compare it to the Formula One racing, you know, that the pilots are all the time with the shifting first, second, third, fourth, fifth, back to third. So they're all the time in full control of the power. So I always think of a properly collected work is when you have the hind legs in complete power, like they're ready to give you 100% gas the second you ask for it. But because they're there and they're under the body of the horse, they give you this lightness and this uphill tendency, and it almost feels like you are in the trot. Especially, I feel it always in the trot. I think is the gait that you can feel the difference between the collected and the regular work, or the working trot, or the extension. I think when you can really feel that there's the power behind you, it's like a sports car, and they're ready to just really push, and like the boats when they are lifting from the front, and you go.
Okay, so we're a little more over an hour, and I had promised that this was only going to be 1 hour, but if Maribel and Juan allow me, and especially because we had some technical difficulties, I would like to go with some questions from the audience. So this one question for Juan, but I think it's wonderful for Maribel as well. And the question is, what does perfection means to you?
I would like to add also just one more comment, Cesar, before we start with this one, to the previous one that I didn't mention, an exercise that I like to work on.
Okay.
It's transitions, going in and out, in and out, in and out. The corners, trying to work on the shoulder ins so that they can learn to lower the pelvis, so that they can learn the mechanic of lowering the croup. The halts, the reinbacks are also very, very good. And we just overall like to always keep in mind the feeling of our seat. Everything comes from our seat. And when we're using too much our hands, then they're locking their back. So those are the exercises that I would work on.
Well, I have to ask a question myself. What about the working hand? You know, being from Spain and being trained by your father, and you're all very good with training on hand. Do you do that a lot in your daily training?
Always, always, with young horses, with our Grand Prix adult veteran horses. We think it's the perfect way to establish at first, when they are learning the mechanic of the piaffe and passage. It's a good way to establish the trust and the idea of the mechanic without the added weight of the rider. But even when they know the mechanic, to work without the weight of the rider and to have them really understand the mechanic with as much freedom as possible. It's also a great warming up exercises with certain horses. And it's a good way to, as a rider also, when you work in hand your horses, see with your own eyes how the angles are from the hind legs, front legs, the top line. It's a good way to keep in perspective what you're going to later on feel, how it looks like. So it's one of our fundamental pillars.
Thank you very much. So I go back to my previous question, and we can ask Maribel. So again, the question was, what does perfection means to you? And I probably would connect that with the 10s that you have probably given in the big important competitions throughout your life. So how does a 10 look for you, Maribel?
Well, actually, I just want to go back to one thing. It
Great.
is not,
You're welcome.
it's not perfection. It's not perfection. It is excellence. When
Okay.
you are sitting there and you are looking at that horse and you just question yourself, what else do I need to make this even better, or to like this even more than what I'm just feeling now, is when you have to give the 10. When you see that the power is there, the collection is there, when you see, and coming back a little bit to Juan, and maybe this sounds a little bit basic, but it is, we as judges, we mention a million times, I guess, the word, the half holds. And does that make sense to you, Juan, when it comes to your transition, what you were talking about transition? Will that translate into every rider that might be listening to us today?
Everything is a half holds because it's harmony. It's
you.
When you can find lightness and you can have a half hold that it's seamless. It's there. You can find it, but it's almost unnoticeable. For me, that's excellence. It's pure, pure communication.
Yeah, so it comes when you are able to make your horse look and feel like an accordion.
Yep.
That it goes out and then comes back.
Yep.
That's very good. That's very clear. So Juan, and then you had mentioned before that you were a perfectionist. So what does perfection means to you? Is what
beauty, relaxation, accuracy, emotions. For me, that's perfection. When you're able to execute a perfect, accurate, and precise test with emotions. For me, that's excellence, perfection, you name it.
Okay, so now I have this is one for Maribel. So the question is from Yolanda, and she says, what would you recommend to Juan to reach the top positions, and I that in the world?
Here's my ear, really listening.
What is in the top in the top positions in the world? I think that yeah, it is when you are able to be up there, when your name is well known in this sports world. And I'm not talking about only dressage only, because we have a very short time memory. We are a lot of people in this world. It is very populated, so your time, it goes very, very quickly. If there are people today that if you ask them about Nicole Ufhop, which was not that far away, that far back, many people do not know the name, doesn't ring a bell. So I think that it goes quickly. So when you're able to be there and stay there, and Juan has proven that he has been there from the beginning, I think that that means being on the top of the world. The other thing is whether he is having today the best partner. Maybe he is. Maybe his partner still needs to develop his horse. He will and become a little bit more powerful, more expressive, better in some of the exercises that he needs to improve. But I have no doubt that Juan has all the skills, and it's not because he's here. I really think that he's a super rider.
Thank you, thank you.
We all agree. We all agree on that. It's a pleasure to watch him ride. And
yeah.
Then, Juan, there's a question here for you. It says, Juan rides with apparent joy. How do rider emotions play into the response from the horse and the feeling from the judges? So this one is like for both.
I think something that I always have a tendency to want to improve overall is actually my face expression, because there's a fine line between focused, tense, focused, and relaxed, focused. And we can see this with so many of the actual best riders in the world, the ones that are in the best placings of the world ranking, that some riders have really learned to not only feel relaxed, but show as if you are relaxed. And some others, even though they might feel relaxed, their face expression and their body language sends a different message. And for me, I mean, we're meant to be enjoying it. We're meant to be really having a good time. And it's difficult because not always it's an easy test. Not every horse every time gives you an easy feeling in the arena. Complications come up, there's difficulties, there's exercises that are easier for some horses, some other exercises are more challenging. And as a rider, you have all of these feelings. And when you get worried, then something that tends to happen is you get squinting eyes, and you get like a tense face. And sometimes, even if it's all going really well, out of the pure ambition and wanting to a hunger of wanting to give it your best, I noticed that on myself, I get this really like angry face, and it's not always correlating with what I'm feeling. So for me, it's very important to always keep in mind why we're doing this, why we're competing, why, like, what has led you to this moment that you're in the arena. All of the hard work has been put in, everything is behind. Now enjoy it. It's your 5 minutes of glory, you know?
Yeah.
So Maribel, how's the feeling for you as a judge?
I think that we are all doing this from your side and our side as judges, writers and judges, and it's because of the challenge.
Yeah.
We enjoy the challenge of getting there. But I can tell you that the faces of the writers tell you a lot, and it's not only the faces of the writers or their expression. When everything is going well, when things are smooth and harmonious and pretty, and the flow is there, even though they are not smiling, they are focused or they are concentrated. People have different expressions depending on their character. You can feel it. It goes through. It's just more than that, just more than the look.
Can I take the opportunity to ask a question that I've had for a long time? And actually, now that we're sitting here together and we're speaking, it's not the same topic, but it's something that I wanted to ask.
Go ahead.
From this point of view, what do you feel, or what do you think about when a rider is really pleased with an exercise, and at the end of the exercise, like maybe a diagonal with flying changes, and the rider is pleased and wants to let the horse know, and they pat the horse? What is the first thought that goes through your mind?
Actually, I really do not mind, unless, but there are writers that tend to abuse that patting, throughout the test. And I think that sometimes it gives me the impression that maybe that has been a difficult spot or a difficult exercise to achieve, and that rider is so pleased at that stage that he wants to show it. That's my feeling. Sometimes it's like, maybe that was not as good before.
Yeah, and I agree with Maribel, but I also think that, like, many times where you're sitting there, you don't really know where this pair, rider-horse combination is coming from. So sometimes you see, let's say, some changes that are not the best, but probably this was the best time that they were able to accomplish them. Mm-hmm. So, and the rider pats the horse in a nice, positive way. So I feel happy about this. And when you see, and when you have already given like a really good mark, and it's done quiet and calmly as a reward for the horse, there's no problem for me whatsoever.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for that. It's good to keep in mind.
Okay, and then I have a question that has got to do with music. So this goes for both of you. For Juan, when you choose the music, and for Maribel, when you listen to the music in the freestyle. So the question is, how important is the precision of the beat of the music with the beat of the horse? Or is it more important the general feeling that music creates? So I don't know who wants to start.
Please, Maribel, I want to listen.
I want to say that, when riders, when everyone looks, for me, when you're looking at the freestyle, it's important that the rider, the trainer, the judge can see harmony. It's like a couple that is dancing. When you see a couple that is dancing and everything flows and goes with, you are not really looking or counting in the metronome whether to see if this is exactly the way they should move the feet. But the expression, the picture, the whole picture gives you the feeling that this is smooth and this is like dancing and the flow keeps going. So I think that, yes, sometimes you look at the horse and the music, and you tend to, in your eye is like, this is not going together. And then you look a little bit more profound and you will see that there is a lack of synchronicity between the horse's bit and the music. But that might be also that the performance of that day is not as it should be, like you are a little bit ahead of music or a little bit behind the music. So I would like to see what one has to say about that one.
I completely agree with you, because the freestyle, the fun behind the music and the freestyle is that it opens up a world of opportunities for maybe riders like myself, that I have a certain limitation in the technical quality of the competition in the previous day, in the Grand Prix or whatever test it was. In the freestyle, I always feel like I can reach higher. I can climb up the rankings because of the artistic side. And to speak about the music, I think every rider has and should have their own style, their own signature, their own essence. And when you can see it represented in the music, I think it makes it that much more special. You know, I'm Spanish, so a little bit of a Latin touch. I'm young, so something modern pop, but yet I am doing dressage. It's something classical and cultural, you know, and it's an experience that you meant, it's refined. So it's got to find this balance, you know. It's like an accordion, like Maribel was pointing out earlier about the transitions. And also each rider horse combination needs a different type of a theme, you know, and I think it's the special day of any championship. The beat. Okay. And just to point out a little comment about the beat, I agree with Maribel that, okay, in some tests, you can really see a clear attachment between the rhythm of the music and the rhythm of the paces or the gaits, the transitions and everything. And when you can pull it off, I think it looks spectacular. But there's also more risk, because like Maribel says, every day is a different performance. Things sometimes slightly change. And when it's that perfectly composed and put together, as soon as something, and so this can always happen, something goes wrong, the entrance, the transition, one more stride, you're off. And then when you're off, it's much more of not a punishment, but a penalty, I think, because he looks off.
Juan, I have a question. The last time I saw you riding a freestyle was in Frankfurt last December. And I have to say I was not judging, otherwise I could not be saying this. But I remember very well that you had used a Colombian musician, Colombian singer, Juanes. How did you end up choosing Juanes?
It's actually quite funny, because at home, that freestyle was put together by, it was a family project. My dad and I worked on the choreography, and my mom and I chose the music, the songs. And what we liked about Juanes is that it represented a big part of our life, because it was the first 2 years actually that we were in the States. I was just beginning with my dressage career. It was the first time that I was starting to compete in dressage. And we thought it was a very manly type of a beat. It had a Latin touch. I actually used some of the lyrics, very little, which is actually something we could also comment on. What your thoughts as judges on lyrics. And we thought it gave it a cool touch. You know, the beat is great. It worked really well with my horse's canter rhythm, and the theme. It was just, it's cool. You know, it's got, you know, swag.
And you know what was amazing? This was in Germany, but the audience was clapping and was absolutely happy with the theme.
I think it's international. It's an emotion. It's a vibe, you know, and you can enjoy it. And even if it's in a different language, I think there's no barriers. That's the beauty behind music. That even if the lyrics you might not be understanding the lyrics, it's the flow, the way, the voice, the music, the way it's put together, and that plus a nice performance, it can give you goosebumps.
Yeah,
music is universal.
Yeah,
I agree. So, and Maribel, what do you think about using lyrics on the freestyles?
Well, I don't mind, unless the lyrics are way too much overwhelming and overpowering, that are taking your attention away from what you are supposed to focus on into what you are hearing. you know, like it's the music, it's one thing, but when the lyrics add up to that. However, I have to say, having said that, I have to say that there are many freestyles today that have lyrics and they just look fantastic. So it's not always like a real question. It depends how much and how it's back to the artistic part, how delicate you are with your choice. And as Juan said, I think it has to have the imprint of who you are and what you want to achieve. But just commenting on that a little bit, I have heard, I think it was Mariette who said, we don't want to see a horse, a freestyle with lyrics if you have a horse with a problem with the connection, with an open mouth while you're listening to the sound of voices, because then it really distracts you even more. It could be like the horse is singing.
Yeah, that's good.
I tend to compare it to a nice fragrance. If you put too much, you overdo it, it's not nice. You know, if you put the right amount, it's a nice touch.
Exactly.
I would like to stress what Maribel said. I think music is universal. And I was just remembering in Frankfurt in December, Juan, I don't know if you remember, but when the Queen of Dressage came at the end, she changed the music for her last final center line on Passage Piaf, and German writer in German soil, and she switched the music to Feliz Navidad.
It was so good.
You know, Spanish lyrics, and the crowd went even more crazy when Juanito did the Juanes song. So it is universal. It certainly is universal.
But I actually, speaking about that specific example, I thought it was so smart that she chose to put like Merry Christmas in Spanish, Feliz Navidad. It was Christmas time the week before. It just made sense, you know, that she was that quick to pick that up and to apply it into the freestyle. I thought that's when you can really differentiate when you are the best, you know, at the top of the world, and when you are like me, little by little climbing up, you know, trying to work my way up there.
Okay, well, I think we have reached the end of this conference. I really want to thank Maribel and Juan for sharing their expertise and their experiences with us. It was really wonderful having you. I really want to apologize to everybody for the little problems that we had, but well, at the end, I think we succeed. I just, after I thank a lot Maribel and Juan, I'm trying to put back my presentation, which I don't know where it is right now.
Thank you, Cesar. I take the chance then to thank you and to thank everybody that joined us. It's an honor for me to be able to share some time with two judges that I respect and admire a lot. We have been together for a long time since I started competing, and for me, it's a privilege to be able to be here today.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Cesar. Thank you, Juan. Thanks for the audience for listening. And let's cope and share whatever we can share in order to make us feel closer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And before we finish, I just wanted to tell you that next Tuesday, so April 21, we will have Bernard Morel and Morgan Barbazon. And then the following week, we will go to talk about stewarding. And we will have Lisa Goreta, and we will have Joel Bayer-Keenan on April 28th. So with this, I really, really want to thank you all for joining us. As we usually do here, we stay a little longer. So if you want and Maribel want to stay, and we open the microphone and everybody chats a little bit from all over around the world. So you're welcome if you have things to do. But again, my deepest gratitude for joining us today, and the same for all the participants. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Cesar. I'll stay for a little bit. I'll stay a few minutes until dinner's ready.
Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you.